This week's Parsha is Parshas Korach. Parshas Korach, of course, discusses Korach's disagreement and confrontation with Moshe. But the disagreement was much more nuanced than we think it was. There was primarily four groups who were parties to this disagreement with Korach, who sided, quote unquote, with Korach. There was Korach himself. There were the sons of Reuven, from the tribe of Reuven, people from the tribe of Reuven. There was Dasan and Aviram, and there was 250 men of the highest caliber, as the verse says explicitly. Each had its own motivation and complaint against Moshe, says the Malbim. Korach's complaint was that his uncle's son, who was the youngest of the brothers of Amram, his grandfather, he is the one who got the princehood of the tribe of Levi. Korach thought logically that he should be the one to get that position because his father was the second to eldest of the brothers, while the eldest of the brothers, his two sons, Moshe and Aaron, one became the leader of Klal Yisrael and one became the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. So he reasoned that the next highest position should go to him, Korach. The sons of Reuven were reacting to the switch that originally it was the firstborn, and which would be the tribe of Reuven, who was the firstborn of Yaakov, to serve in the Mishkan, to be basically the Kohanim of the Mishkan. That was switched because of a sin that they committed, of what Reuven committed, and therefore the Kedusha, the holiness, and the job of attending to the Mishkan was transferred to the Levim. Because of that, their complaint was that they should get the privilege of serving in the Mishkan. The third group was Dasan and Aviram. As is evident from the verses, their complaint was that Moshe had brought them to the desert. They said that Moshe had taken them out of a land flowing with milk and honey and instead brought them to this desert. They didn't bring them to a land full of milk and honey, and instead they're sitting in a desert. Their complaint was against Moshe himself, that he led them out of Egypt. And then you have the 250 people of prominent stature. Those 250 people, their complaint was, according to the Malbim, was that they thought that everybody was holy and pious and scholarly in the Jewish nation. They did not need a leader at all. Like Rashi brings the Medrash that says that they said, does a house full of sefarim of holy books need a mezuzah? How could that be? The Jewish people are all holy. We don't need someone to lead us. So every single one had their own complaint against Moshe. And it was different in its nature and in its motivation. There is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos in Ethics of Our Fathers which states that any disagreement that is for the sake of heaven will be upheld, meaning that it will come to a fruitful conclusion. While any disagreement, any arguer, someone who disagrees, who is not doing it for the sake of heaven, instead for selfish interests, his opinion will not come to fruition. It will not be productive. It will not create any type of productive discussion or conclusion. The examples that Pirkei Avos gives is that Moshe, in his disagreement with Korach, he is the primary person who we can consider a person who had a disagreement for the sake of heaven. He defended his position as the manig, as the leader of Klal Yisrael, because he was appointed by Hashem. While Korach, and as the Pirkei Avos states, Korach ve'adasa, Korach and his congregation, they were not for the sake of heaven. They were serving themselves. They were selfish, and each one had his own motivation. The Malbim points out that the wording of Pirkei Avos is Korach ve'adasa, Korach and his congregation. Why didn't it just say Adas Korach, the congregation of Korach? So the Malbim says that Pirkei Avos is giving us a deeper understanding of a machlokes shaloi l'shem shamayim, a disagreement not for the sake of heaven. That not only will not come to fruition any type of productive conclusion, But the disagreeers amongst themselves who are not for the sake of heaven will be fractioned. Each one will have his own opinion, and they will never have any consensus among themselves. Why is that? Because they're self-serving. And by its very nature, self-serving means that I only serve myself and no one else. If you're going to be selfish and not for the sake of heaven, then you'll have no consensus in the crowd. Everybody is going to have a different reason why he's in it. Rashi, at the beginning of the parsha, explains why the pasuk says, when referring to Korach, gives his illustrious heritage, is missing Yaakov. It says Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahas ben Levi, going through the generations, but does not say his ultimate grandfather Yaakov. And it brings a medrash, Rashi brings a medrash and says that the reason why is because Yaakov did not want his name mentioned in regard to Korach, because what Korach did was shameful. The question is like this. I believe that never in the entire Torah do we trace a person's parental heritage further than one generation. It's very common in the Torah to do one generation, but over here we do 4 generations. So why, Rashi's coming to explain why we don't include a 5th generation, but why don't we ask the simple question is, why at all do we trace Korach's lineage? Have a good Shabbos.